Sabrina Binkley, Head of School at Spruce Tree Montessori and Chair of the Fairbanks Chamber Board of Directors. I'd like to take a moment, as we do each week, to thank our executive partners whose logos you saw on the screen before we began our program today. These businesses provide a rock-solid foundation for the Fairbanks Chamber to be successful throughout the year. Their support is not only financial. These businesses share knowledge and experience that help shape and direct our advocacy efforts and create awareness that drives economic strength and growth for the interior of Alaska. A full list of our executive partners can be found on our website. We would also like to give a special thank you to Alaska 529 for sponsoring today's presentation. We are grateful for the continued support of our member businesses who help us make these weekly presentations possible. We'll hear from them later today in our program. And now I'd like to welcome Brenna online to help us recognize our new and renewing members. Brenna?
Thanks, Sabrina, and welcome back, everyone. It's so good to see everyone after that session of political forums. So we have 5 new members to welcome today, and I hope I don't butcher this new member's name, but it's Mbote Dance Boutique, and they're located right off of College Road. We're also welcoming Kids Closet Connection, who will be having a pop-up event shortly. 5 Hole Accounting and Investigation, also located off of the Johansson. Pizza Hut of Fairbanks and North Pole, of course, our favorite go-to place for pizza in town, and War Web Design, specializing in graphic design and web development. We'd also like to thank our renewing members, starting with Alaska Works Partnership, Armed Services YMCA of Alaska, Cricket Wireless, Wireless Revolution, Denali Federal Credit Union, Ural Style Grocery, Fairbanks Arts Association, Fairbanks Roller Girls, Fly Trampoline Park, and Integrative Pain Center of Alaska. Thank you for renewing your membership. We'd also like to welcome some new members to our 110% Club, which means that they renewed their membership and went above and beyond their membership dues to help us with our advocacy actions. And those are Alaska Enterprise Solutions, Auto Trim Design, Boys and Girls Club of the Tanana Valley, Browns Hill Quarry, Cook and Hogberg LLC and CPAs, Diamond Fence Company, Everett's Air Fuel, Full Circle Professional Services, Long Building Technologies, and McCafferty's, a coffee house. Thank you for helping us in our advocacy efforts, and thank you for renewing your membership. Today's Membership Minute focuses on how to get the word out about your business and what you're doing currently. So there's a couple of ways that the Chamber can help you do that. Keep in mind that as a member, you have access to purchase a $50 mailing label list from us so that you can put those on marketing pieces or printed collateral so you can send those out in the mail to the whole membership. We also have an extra scoop portion in our weekly newsletter called The Scoop, which is a paid promotional spot. You can pay $50 to get your ad or call to action placed in there as well. And then last, I always like to touch on our military tours. We're currently looking for inserts, BOGO coupons, little gifts, anything that you think would be of value or would help recognize your business to put in military welcome bags before we do our weekly Friday military tours with Explore Fairbanks. If you have questions about how to get your business inside those military bags, in the scoop, or get your hands on the mailing list, you can reach out to us at the Chamber at 452-1105. Back to you, Sabrina.
Great, thanks so much, Brenna. So the Chamber's 5 advocacy committees are in the process of updating the Chamber's advocacy agenda in preparation for our final presentation to the board at our next board meeting on Monday, November 16. The board will also discuss 2021 advocacy priorities, review membership applications for all Chamber committees, and approve several nominations made by Chair-elect Angie Talent that will be effective in her year as chair next year. So if you're living under a rock, I just thought I'd mention that today is general election day and the polls are open in our community until 8 p.m. Mail-in absentee ballots can be mailed and will be counted as long as they are postmarked today. You can drop your mail-in ballot at the drop box at the State Building on 7th Avenue here in downtown Fairbanks, or you can ask your postal worker to hand cancel your ballot at the window of your post office. So I thought today would be a good day to bring back my reflection. I've taken several weeks off in the interest of time, giving the political forum programming that we've been hosting. So when I went to cast my vote this morning at 7:12 a.m., the little church on Chinapump Road, which is my polling place, was hopping. The parking lot was packed with running cars, because it was indeed 22 below, and the line was wrapped down and back twice through the halls. The energy was great. I didn't see a single person not wearing a mask either. So way to go, Fairbanks, keep doing your part out there. But as I was standing in line, wondering how long my wait might be, I started thinking about the elections I voted in and realized this is my 25th year as a registered voter. This milestone was not met with celebratory choices, but having the privilege to cast my vote is something to raise a glass to. I was so proud to be there this morning among my community, so proud to be a working mother, a small business owner, an educator. The past few months have been a bit soul-searching, I think, for most of us, for lots of different reasons. Living in a pandemic and facing much uncertainty has led me down the path of philosophy a number of times, and my choices today reflect my personal platform, my values and beliefs. I don't think in any of the 25 elections I voted in that I liked everything about every candidate I've supported. Well, except maybe for when I voted for my father-in-law in the 2006 Alaska gubernatorial election. But rather, I voted with my mind backed by my heart, and I hope you did the same. Marissa, it's time for your President and CEO report.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. You were talking about elections, and I realized that I'm having a wardrobe malfunction today. I forgot to wear my sticker. I participated in early voting, and I was so sure to save that sticker so I could wear it today, and I left it in the car. So I'm gonna have to go grab that at the end of our meeting today. I do want to make a couple of announcements. It's been a long time since we've been able to chat with you in the interest of time because of our political forums. So I just wanted to let folks know, if you haven't been following along on Facebook and Instagram, the Chamber did roll out a campaign called Around the Town in 80 Days. This is a campaign designed to encourage our community to support local and shift maybe some of our online habits that we developed this spring and summer and get that spending back into our community, where we can support our neighbors and our friends and our friends, our neighbors, and our neighbors' friends. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can participate. You can pick up one of these fancy official game envelopes, as we're calling them. We have them here at the Chamber, and you can also pick them up at some of our participating businesses. It is an envelope, so you can see it's designed for you to capture receipts from any qualified purchase. And what I'm going to do is just talk to you a little bit about how to play. So every Wednesday, we will release a list of featured businesses on our website and also on Facebook and Instagram. You can shop at any of those featured businesses for the week and save those receipts and put them into your envelope. Then you're going to track your score on the front of the envelope. So in each balloon bubble, there's a space for you to write a number. So you can write the number. However many receipts from that week are eligible for the drawing, you can write that on the outside of the envelope. Just make sure that your corresponding receipt is on the inside. And then you can also, so each of those receipts will get you entered into a drawing for a pair of Alaska Airlines tickets. We're going to do that drawing at the beginning of the year I think on January 6th. And then also there's more opportunities to win. So each week, we're going to be giving away weekly prizes, which you're eligible for by using the hashtag 80 Days of Local on Facebook or Instagram. Just make sure that you make those posts in a setting that is public so that we can see them. When the game is over, which this goes through the end of the year, you're going to take this envelope with all of your receipts inside of it, and you're going to drop it off here at the Chamber office. We have a drop box located right outside of our door. We do need those by, I think it's January 4th, so make sure that you get those dropped off by then. You can drop them off anytime you want, though. If you want to drop it off ahead of that deadline, that's totally fine. That way you're sure to get it in by the deadline. Also, if this is the first time that you're hearing of this and you notice that we're in week 3, that's okay. You can jump into this game anytime. You don't have to participate every single week if you don't want to. This is not designed to get you to buy things you don't need. This is designed for people to start thinking about local habits. If you have any other questions, please visit us online at fairbankschamber.org. You'll find more information. Of course, you can call us anytime. A couple of other announcements. I do want to let the Chamber membership know to save the date for our annual membership meeting, which is scheduled for December 8th. Now, that event is going to look a little different this year. We are going to go virtual, but don't let that bring you down. We're definitely planning on something a little bit new and different in terms of delivery while preserving some of our traditions. For example, we will be handing out our traditional annual awards, so make sure to go to our website and find those nomination forms for the annual awards. Now, as a reminder, we give away 3 awards every year. One is the Bill Stroker Business of the Year Award. The other is a George Nervos Volunteer of the Year Award. And the final award is the Bernice M. Joseph Education Advocate of the Year Award. If you know individuals or businesses who have gone above and beyond in those categories this year, please make sure to nominate them by Friday, November 20th. As for the Artist of the Year this year, we have made the decision to go ahead and carry over recognition of Jamie Smith as the Fairbanks Chamber Artist of the Year through 2021. Due to so many interruptions in our plan to partner with Jamie in this year, we're excited to continue that partnership in 2021, where his show, First Friday show, will be Hindsight is 2020, which is so appropriate. You can find information about all of our programs, events, and more on fairbankschamber.org, which is where you'll also find more information about that annual meeting I talked about. Thank you so much, and back to you, Sabrina.
All right, thanks, Marissa. Now for our main presentation. Interior Alaska businesses demand an educated, trained, and readily available skilled workforce, and we recognize the critical need for quality learning opportunities for young Alaskans. One of the components of a system that prepares the generation of our workforce is our public school system. We are happy to have Dr. Gaborik here to update us on the current state as well as the future goals of the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District. Dr. Karen Gaborik has been an educator in the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District since 1995. She was named superintendent in April 2014, and her current contract extends to June 30, 2021. Dr. Gaborik has earned numerous awards throughout her career, including Alaska Superintendent of the Year, Alaska Principal of the Year, and the Personalized Learning Pioneer Award. She has been active in the Alaska Council of School Administrators since her years as a building administrator and is currently past president of the Alaska Superintendents Association. Dr. Gaborik earned her National Superintendent Certification from AASA, the School Superintendents Association. Thank you so much, Dr. Gaborik, for joining us today. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Chamber. Thank you, Sabrina, so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here and share our annual State of the Schools update with you. And so on our first slide here, I just want to, before we proceed, thank any Board of Education members who might be joining us today as part of this presentation. If we were in person, I would recognize them and call them by name and have them stand up, but so just a virtual thank you for being here if you are in attendance. And then also a huge thanks to Rebecca Herbie and Yumi McCullough in our communications department for helping, as always, behind the scenes to pull these types of events and presentations together. So next slide. We will talk about and start out with some student demographic data, some district data on student demographics and assessment results. So next slide. As is true the last couple times I've been with you, we have 36 schools in our district. You can see that 18 of those are elementary. We have 4 middle schools, 4 high schools, and we have 10 different schools of choice. And our schools of choice include not only our charter schools, but also schools like Barnett and Hutchison High School. Next slide. Our enrollment, and these are last year's enrollment numbers, 13,219 students, and you can see how that breaks down in terms of elementary, middle, and senior high school students. Although we did have a bit of a bump in last year's enrollment, about 50 students in general, we've seen a fairly steady decline in enrollment over about the last 13 years. Next slide. Looking at our ethnicity, I always like to report on this. You can see the different ethnic groups represented among our student population. And as I explain every year, if you look at these numbers, they add up to much more than 100%. And the reason is because we have internally tried to capture a more accurate view of our student population. And many, many students identify as Caucasian and Alaska Native, and as they are, they're more accurate about their ethnic background. So the Caucasian students, 80% of our student population being Caucasian, that's Caucasian, and some of them indicate they're Caucasian and. So you can see about 20% Alaska Native students and others, African American, and also 10% Hispanic, about 9%, and 8.7% Asian Pacific Islander, and about 24% 2 or more races, and that's a category just all by itself that some people select. So next slide. With the diverse population of students come many, many different languages that students speak. So we have over 60 heritage languages spoken in our school district by students. As you can imagine, it's that's a pretty large task in terms of making sure we meet all those student needs. We serve those students who do speak different languages in a variety of different ways, including through our Federal Programs Department and our English Language Learner program. Next slide. This is our graduation rate that you can see over time, and we were on such a good run. So from 2013, when I first started, to 2019, you can see we had about a 7.5% increase from 73.3% graduation rate to 80.7%. And then last spring, COVID. So a COVID dip right there. We're hopeful that this year, since we're experiencing an entire year in COVID, that hopefully we can make some adjustments that we just weren't able to make on the fly and so quickly last spring. And we know that some students definitely fell through the cracks last spring. So we're hoping that that won't happen and that we'll get that percentage back on the incline. Next slide. Again, dropout rates, a good run since 2014 till now, about a 2% decrease in dropout rates from 4.5% when I started to this year about 2.6%. So again, an amazing amount of work on the part of staff all across the district, both with graduation rates and dropout rates, and keeping those numbers moving in the right direction. Next slide. We'll do a budget overview, talk about a little bit of basics from our budget last year, and then let you know where we're headed this coming year. Next slide. So you can see on this slide our operating budget. Our total operating budget is about $210 million. Our total budget, overall budget, which includes grants funding, is about $240 million. And so you can see the revenue chart there. The state, of course, is our largest source of revenue. About almost 63% of our revenue comes from the state. And then the local revenue from the borough is the second largest source of income for the district, and that's just under 24%. And then you can see also federal and other financing sources. That federal revenue does include impact aid monies that come to the school district for our military connected students. Next slide. Just a quick overview of expenditures. Salaries and wages and benefits comprise 88% of our budget. And so, we provide services to students by having a wide variety of people employed by the district who do that work. 88% is actually getting a little bit high. Our chief financial officer and myself, chief operations officer actually, and myself, Andy DeGraw, have been talking about we need to start reining that back in a bit. The national recommendation for expenditures related to salaries and benefits for school districts about 84%. And so we need to keep an eye on that piece for sure, among many other things this year, as we sort of move through COVID and the challenges that we'll be looking at. You can see in addition to salaries and wages, of course, we have contract services, supplies and materials, equipment, and other expenses that we have. Next slide. So I want to spend some time on COVID-19 and looking at sort of current impacts and potential future impacts of the global pandemic, and attempting to provide public education in such a challenging time. Next slide. So right now we have 3 learning options for our families. We have in-person learning, we call it our blended model, so in-person remote, and the idea is that if we can be in school there, this is the choice for families who don't mind having to move back and forth between zones if we were to find ourselves moving back and forth between zones. So if school is open, they want their kids in school. If school is not open, then they're okay with a remote option. And the interesting thing about this year is because we started the year in remote and then moved, I think it was the end of August, moved into the red operational zone, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. We haven't had, a comprehensive in-person option yet this year. So that moving back and forth hasn't occurred like we thought it might when we were working on our plans this summer. The second option is e-learning. And so this is 100% e-learning. We have many families who've selected that option. This is a good option for families who don't want some of that back and forth. And many of our families, they just, they don't want their students in school until COVID is over and until they feel like it's safe. That might be for their own children's protection. It might be for family members' protection. They might have high-risk family members at home. And so, again, we're trying to, this year, trying to give families options for their learning. And then, of course, the third district option is our best homeschool. Next slide. So here's some numbers in terms of how many families, how many students actually are accessing these different options. So just over 9,000 selected the in-person blended remote option, 1,000, about 1,100, the e-learning option, and then about 900, which is a very significant increase in our best homeschool option. Next slide. So significant budget impacts with this. So our district enrollment is down close to 2,000 students overall. Now, these are estimates right now where we just finished our 20-day count, which happens in October. And that 20-day count is the basis for all of our budgeting. And so we're just finishing up those numbers now. In about another week, we'll be able to report out exactly where we landed. So these are estimates. In addition to the 1,900 students who've left the district, we have 700 who moved from, a traditional learning option to best homeschool, which means reduced funding because homeschools are funded differently in this state than students who are enrolled in a more traditional school setting. So that's about, when you're talking just funding impact, that's about a 2,600 student impact to our budget. When you can see there the revenue loss, and this will occur this fiscal year, is going to be, we anticipate, between $7 and $8 million. The challenge of that is that will impact the money we receive this fiscal year. So we will receive from the state $7 to $8 million less. And the issue is that we're staffed, right? We were staffed for our projections this year, and we're committed to staff contracts. And so that's not a shift that you make, in the middle of the year, in terms of, you don't just lay off a whole bunch of staff right in the middle of the year based on these kind of numbers. And so, that will take a big chunk out of what fund balance we do have left, which is significantly reduced from what it used to be. In terms of staffing impact, looking forward, again, we're just kind of baseline starting out. I'm having people, as they look at their budgets, and I work with directors and schools, I'm telling everybody to anticipate about a 15% budget cut for next year. So going into next year and planning for next year. When you look at what that equates to, that's about a $22.5 million reduction. And so those are huge numbers that we will potentially be dealing with as we move into this coming budget year. Our first marker in terms of budget, in terms of preparing budget for the next school year, is when the governor's budget is released. That's typically almost on the day, December 15th. So that'll be a really important number for us. My budget is due to the school board on February 1st. The board then works on it from there, and the board submits their recommended budget to the Borough Assembly by April 1st. So we're just starting to gear up for budget right now. And again, we kind of wait till the governor's budget comes out to really start digging in. And so we know, have an idea of what we might be dealing with in terms of revenue from the state. Next slide. So I just wanted to throw this slide up. This is the graphic that the Department of Education at the state level uses for their Alaska Smart Start 2020 guidelines. You can find these guidelines, and I've been presented to the chamber a couple times now this fall and have dug a little bit deeper into what's available on that website. But if you're interested, the Smart Start guidelines are available on the state website in the Department of Education area. And so the Smart Start guidelines are our foundational documents for operations during COVID. And those guidelines are based on, the Smart Start guidelines are based on CDC guidelines, and the Department of Education works very closely with the Department of Health and Human Services at the state level. So the next slide. I just have a couple slides here of examples of, if you go to our website, there's lots and lots of resources there, but some of the guidelines that you will see on our website that guide all of our school and district health and safety decisions. So this is just a nice overview. This particular slide is a nice overview of cleaning and disinfecting and social distancing and transportation and how classrooms should be structured and that sort of thing. The slide you're seeing now is just examples of a couple decision trees. So you can see a decision tree for students and what families should be thinking about when they wake up in the morning, and if their student is showing symptoms or not, kind of the process they should walk through, and then also staff. And so again, really important, just really encouraging both staff and students not to come to school if they're feeling ill. Our current challenge right now is that we do have very dedicated staff who are coming to work ill. It feels like a cold. Of course, we're in the middle of flu season. You guys watch the news just like I do. It's really challenging to, know what the illness might be. And so, people are thinking, well, it's not COVID. And then they start to feel worse and worse. And then they go get tested and it is COVID. And then in the meantime, they've been around other staff potentially. And so then those close contacts all have to go home and be quarantined for 14 days. And so that is one of our challenges in terms of staffing. We have many staff who are on telework agreements right now, but we also have staff who are in buildings serving students I'll talk about our phase-in plan here in just a little bit. So when we lose the staff due to either isolation for symptoms or to quarantines because they're a close contact, we've been in a position where we've had to close schools. So I had to close LAD, and that was an issue of some spread actually happening inside a building. So you really got to watch transmission inside a building if that's occurring. And then I also had to close most recently Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School, and that was more directly related to staffing issues. Between some positive cases and then the close contacts, it took people out of the building who specifically were serving the students that we were bringing into the building, and they just weren't available to do it. So also with Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School, an abundance of caution on my part and trying to be very cognizant of any impact the district might have on our military partners. And so our schools on the installations we're keeping a very close eye on because of course I have to be extremely sensitive to any impact we might have on our military readiness here in Alaska. So just trying to watch that very carefully as well. Next slide. So this is directly from our website. This is where you can find what zone we're in. So this particular slide screenshot was taken from Monday. So you can see the 7-day case rate average and the 14-day case rate average. This is taken directly from the Department of Health and Social Services website and these numbers. You can also see what goes into the decision making. The case rates are definitely the primary driver in terms of determining what our operational zone is as a school district, what zone we're in. But you can see we're also looking at hotspot occurrences. Like again, when we were looking at LAD, or you look at Eielson, or different schools, different sort of COVID positive events that are taking place not only in the school district but in the community. Always keeping in mind hospital bed capacity. Testing capacity has been a big one. Lots of conversation about that in recent weeks. And then like you just heard, student absences to some degree, but what's really been impacting us is staff absences. So every Thursday our medical advisory committee meets, and on our medical advisory committee we have a number of people. Definitely notable are Dr. Michelle Nace, who's on that committee. She works with Foundation Health Partners, and she's basically my partner in this, my community partner in this as we move through COVID as a district. We have Danette Marks with Public Health, and then we have a number of Foundation Health Partners doctors also on that committee who join as they are able. We also, when we need, we tap directly into Dr. Olson at the state level with the Department of Health and Social Services. She's the one who's been tasked with working with school districts and being a liaison between DHSS, the Department of Education, and school districts. She's been a terrific resource. And then when needed, we've had Dr. Zink join us as well, especially when we have some of these hotspot or potential transmission events pop up. She's been a great resource. So we hold our meetings on Thursday. We determine what zone we're in. And if I had an announcement to make, that, hey, we're headed back to yellow, it's looking like we could open up, then I would let folks know, and we would let folks know like at what point the next week that we would start opening buildings up and providing access to more students. Next slide. This is also on the website, just so folks can see that the bottom row there, the number of lab confirmed student cases we've had since August 24th, and these are Monday numbers, and then also staff cases. Due to the small n sizes, I have not broken these down further for public consumption, just to protect the privacy of staff and students. Again, we're just watching every school very carefully, talking almost daily with some schools to be sure that their staffing capacities can meet student needs right now. Next slide. One of the silver linings in all of this is that through CARES funds that the district received directly from the state, we were able to purchase devices and get to a place where I've been wanting for quite some time to be what's called a one-to-one district, where every student has a device that is a device that they can use throughout the day and take home. And so again, a silver lining in COVID is that it has moved us there. And so we have distributed over 15,000 devices to students and families. These include Macs, PCs, Chromebooks, and iPads. Some of that, what students receive depends on age, what's appropriate age-wise, and then also curriculum-wise, what classes they have. We've also been able to provide 62 MiFi hotspots checked out to district families. We had originally, thought, well, we might be able to help with more of that, but we actually have to be careful as a district to not compete with other internet service providers. And so we're taking a bit of a different approach now to this, and Bright Futures, which is one of our partner organizations that helps us meet the needs of students in all kinds of ways. In past years, you've heard us talk about our food pantries and food to families and clothes and all kinds of things. Well, now they're gearing up to actually see if they can secure donations to help families pay for internet service for those families that are still struggling with connections. So, just as we move through the school year, continuing to look for ways to help families access learning. Next slide. So I just want to talk a little bit about the zones and sort of what our plans are for each of those zones. And before I talk about this slide, I just want to let everybody know, so we're in the red zone, obviously, and we're actually we have a red zone plan. We call it our phase-in plan. It was approved by the board almost 2 months ago now. And it doesn't, serve all of our students. There's a very specific approach to that phase-in plan. And so we're serving we started with our most intensive special needs students, and also through our student support services department, some of our families that were most vulnerable, and that could be because of connectivity and just absolutely having none. It could be, because of support they need as a family that, if they don't access the school, they just otherwise can't get in the community. And so we started, each school, started with their lists and kind of working down their lists in terms of bringing students back slowly. And anyway, so that's kind of our phase-in plan. So the yellow zone plan, if we were to get to yellow zone, back to yellow zone, which would be terrific. Our elementary, we do have an elementary plan. Again, all these have been approved by the school board. So the elementary plan is basically 5 days a week. And we built this plan knowing that our youngest students and, families trying to get our youngest students back into school 5 days a week is a high priority in our community. So 5 days a week and 5 hours a day. So that's the elementary plan. And then the middle school plan, next slide, is similar to the next one you'll see. So it's an A-B cohort model. So students divided into A cohort and B cohort and coming on alternate days, and then receiving extra help on Fridays. So that's the middle school yellow zone plan. And then the next slide shows a sample high school yellow zone plans. It's the same A-B cohort model, but instead of Fridays, the support day for high schools is on a Wednesday. So I talked about, just leave the slide here for just a second. I talked about the red zone plan. I just wanted to add that we have about 1,200 students that are currently being served in buildings. And it kind of depends on how many days a week, what their needs are, what that looks like. It's not regular school. They're coming in for additional academic support, and often our support staff employees are providing those supports. When the cases really started to spike, the last few weeks, we paused just a bit to, be sure. And then we've kind of been picking up the IEP team meetings again and the student support team meetings again. Each school has different numbers of kids in their buildings, depending on what programs they have in their buildings, specifically with special education, in particular, what their school demographics are in terms of their students, and then just capacity-wise, staff-wise. On November 16th, we will have a work session with the school board where we will bring to them third quarter options, and we're going to bring some data as well for the board to consider. We've done a couple surveys recently. One survey was just general questions about how the different learning options are going, and then we're in a survey right now that's very specific to how families might feel about returning in the red zone. So we'll bring that data back to the board. Also first quarter grade reports, and then statistics, some employee statistics related to how we've been functioning this semester in the red zone. And then my hope is that the board on December 1st at their regular meeting will take action on third quarter, and specifically they have yellow zone plans in place, but specifically if we're still in the red zone, what they would like us to do starting after winter break. So it would be great for the community if we have that decision made on December 1st, and before everybody goes into winter break, they know what to expect when coming back in January. Okay, next slide. So some strategic plan highlights that I'd like to share. And so the first one, next slide, we have a new goal in our strategic plan specifically related to equity and inclusion. And the goal is to provide equitable opportunities and an inclusive environment where all students and staff are respected and feel welcome, safe, and supported. And so the board also has a couple very specific objectives under that goal. And so we've contracted with Rodney Gaskins, who many of you know used to work as the executive director of the food bank. He's been a wonderful new partner for the school district, and he's really dug into doing some research, not only about best practices for school districts around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also doing some deep dives into, and he started with 4 departments in our district and has come up with some very specific recommendations that each of the program managers and directors that are working in those departments are now working to implement. Next slide. We've also started training and recognize the need for additional training in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we started this semester with May Marsh and a training that she's calling Brilliant Unity. All of our school administrators have participated in this training. In fact, I think this might be their last week, their last session, wrapping it up, 6 weeks sessions that they've been doing. And then we're also putting together a plan for a 2-year rotation where all of our staff will work through training related to our the National Coalition Builders organization that we've been partnering with for a couple of years now. I think we're in year 3, and so that's been a really positive partnership, and it's a good training for staff that involves, it's engaging and involves really good, healthy dialogue, and will be very specific to school culture and how each school, so it can be tailored to each school, and then also, departments, so the facilities department can, go through this NCBI training and talk about what's the culture around diversity and equity and inclusion in our facilities department. So looking forward to putting all that together and rolling that out. Next slide. And then open circles. This is something that's been ongoing this year. Thank you very much to our diversity committee who kind of kicked this off, and conversations about race, equity, and inclusion. We have another one coming up December 2nd, as you can see there. And these have been really positive experiences, and it's for staff, it's for board members, it's for students, parents, community members, to just have open conversations about race and equity and inclusion. And so this has been a great new addition to what we've been doing in the district. Next slide. A couple years ago, I started a very purposeful program to address recruiting and retention in our district. The governor actually just launched a statewide survey of all educators and other stakeholders to try to get an idea of how to better improve recruiting and retention on a statewide level. So we're in our second year of working on it very specifically, very intentionally at a district level, and contracting with a couple folks who've worked in the state for a long time, Barbara Adams with Adams Analytics Solutions and Jerry Covey with JSC Consulting. And a key piece about this is it's third-party research, and so getting feedback from staff through a third party. So it's nobody in the district necessarily actually at all looking at that data, but then that data gets shared back with school teams. And because we know one of the biggest factors is of retention is how people feel in their work environment. So principals have leadership teams that are looking at the data from their school, from their employees, and then making action plans about what they can do in their schools to improve whatever the issues might be. It could be with onboarding, it could be with professional development, it could be with needing more technical support in my job, anything like that. And then of course, as a district, us looking at that data across schools and providing the supports that we can. So I'm happy about that particular project. Next slide. And I always love to share these communication highlights, and I thank our department for putting together some of these numbers. We have sent out through our Blackboard mass communication system nearly 3,000 messages last school year, so that is a lot of communication. Again, that's kind of one-way communication. Sometimes it's crisis communication, sometimes it's just information to parents. We have a two-way dialogue system called Let's Talk. And so we've received over 1,000 messages with that particular platform. 60% of those are from parents and guardians. And then the district website stats just always blow me away. So we saw over 416,000 users last year with 3.1 million page views last year. And then our social media presence, of course, we also have a significant presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And so we try to reach our families, staff, students in the ways that they like to communicate with us. Next slide. Just a highlight of construction projects. The big one will be finishing Barnett Magnet School, so very excited. They're working on some of the final design work now, plan to finish that up to start May 2021 and finish that up. And then you can see we've got a lighting conversion project that we're doing with the borough and some roof replacements coming up as well. Next slide. And just a little bit about looking to the future. So next slide. I just wanted to, I think I've brought these slides back 3 years in a row now, and I just wanted, because the questions continue to come up about the F-35s, and just kind of to show everybody once again that we're in good shape with regard to students that are coming to us with the F-35s. We continue to be in good shape. So the dark blue there with this elementary schools is our enrollment, and we flatlined our enrollment projection. Like I said, it's actually been decreasing, but we just flatlined it for this particular purpose. You can see the light blue then are through the growth management plan that was study that was conducted a few years ago, the number of students expected to come with the F-35s. And then the white at the top is how many extra seats we have available. And so again, we're feeling pretty confident that we've got plenty of room for the F-35s. And then the next slide shows the same data, but for secondary schools. And of course, a focus in the North Pole, Eielson areas. And what we've been finding is that when you look at what the original projection was and what we're actually experiencing about half the students coming to us about a year later than expected. So again, it's kind of a slow, steady growth in terms of enrollment. It did, we believe, contribute to that slight bump that we had last year. So, and we have enough space in our schools to support those students and families. So next slide. Just wanted to highlight that we got a huge grant from the Department of Education, the State Department of Education, $3.5 million to Fairbanks over 5 years. And this is specifically for social emotional learning, to support social emotional learning for families. And it will provide us with 4 additional social service managers, and our addition of social service managers to our counselors and to our prevention intervention specialists and our behavior aides has we've really started to form a wide network of services for kids and families in our district, specifically around SEL needs. And we anticipate that those new social service managers will go to North Pole Middle, North Pole High, Tanana Middle, and West Valley High. And then the last slide, I believe, yep, is just wanted to welcome the new Board of Education. Of course, our elections saw new members joining us. So here you can see, of course, Judge Lyle, and you can also see Jennifer Luke, April Smith, Matthew Sampson, Maggie Matheson, Choya Sanderson, and our new president, Mr. Tim Doran. Not pictured is Erin Marotti, who was unable to join us, but she still remains with us as a board member, and we'll update that picture as soon as we're back in person again. So. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Gaborik. So we'll now take some questions from our members that came in through our online chat, and I'll ask Janelle to go ahead and present those questions.
Okay, so we do have a few that have come in so far. This was, I guess, a clarification of something that you said in your presentation today. It says this is minor, but a question. Why has the district distributed over 15,000 devices to students when enrollment is approximately 11,300?
Oh, yeah. So we've updated some, and I think just providing support to families as needed. And so I'll have to check back with our IT department actually to be, to get a more clarification on that number and, what the extra ones have been for. So. Thanks for that question. I'll find out more about the specifics of that number.
Okay. And there were a series of questions about, I guess I would say, accountability and student assessment, how that's going to work throughout the school year and with all the different learning arrangements. So I'll kind of maybe run through a couple of them. Are teachers taking attendance? Is it required? Does that vary from school to school or from classroom to classroom? How is that working?
So we actually do have teachers in schools taking attendance at the local level so that they can keep up with students and families, and especially let families know if students aren't engaging. Our reporting requirements to the state level are very different when you're in this kind of situation. And so basically it's if students are enrolled, and when you're in a virtual or online setting, if students are enrolled, then they're considered present, especially with that e-learning model, and it spills over into the other model because that's how this is how the state collects that kind of attendance. But we've encouraged schools, and teachers have taken this on completely on their own, and of course each school kind of has their own system where they're working with and are taking attendance internally and communicating with families if they start to see that a student is not showing up, maybe in a Zoom classroom meeting or with e-learning if they're starting to get behind on their assignments. And of course Best takes attendance very similar to how the whole district is taking attendance right now.
Okay, and I guess kind of along those lines, so how are students being assessed or graded? How is that going to work?
Right, so each teacher has, just as would be the case in a regular year, so I'll just use a high school example, right? They've got their syllabus, they've got their assignments that are due, they've got assessments that they have, whether those be, unit tests or projects or things like that. And so regular grading for, again, in sort of a very irregular time, but regular grading. So we just had first quarter grades that went out. And so that's part of the report that we will provide to the board at the next, not this week, but the next regular board meeting, or during that work session will be what did first quarter grades look like, and how does that compare to historically what first quarter grades have looked like. So there will be semester grades, there will be credit awarded at the high school level. So very similar to what students and families experienced previously.
Okay, and how will state or national assessments be administered this year?
As far as we know, the current information that we have is that we will take tests this spring. And so the PEAKS test will occur. We don't have the details yet necessarily on how that will be facilitated from the state, but we have it on our calendar and we're planning and, having schools prepare for PEAKS in the spring. We also have in our comprehensive assessment system, we use NWEA MAP and AIMSweb. And so we've been able to continue some of that as well, so that, those particular assessments are much more useful to teachers because they provide growth measures, right? So they do a fall test, they do a winter test, and a spring test. And so that's the assessment that's actually much more useful to teachers, is so they can see growth in individual students. And those are continuing this year.
Okay, and I think the last question we're going to have time for, because we do have a few more things to accomplish today in the meeting, is rather a long question, so I'm going to do my best to summarize. There was some news recently about old computers and data storage devices that were sold at auction that had some school district data still left on them that wasn't wiped. So I think I would summarize the questions kind of as, is there anything you can tell us at this point about what the status of that is and how the maybe your IT department can help to ensure that that type of thing doesn't happen in the future?
Yeah, sure. So we're still in process with that. So I'll be somewhat reserved in my comments, but we have received the servers back and are having an outside entity is going to do a forensic analysis and basically let us know what it is they find. As we review our policies, again, we followed procedures that have been in place for quite some time in terms of what wiping devices looks like. As we move forward, we'll probably I think what we're going to end up doing is just destroying devices rather than, attempting to wipe them and then sell them at auction. So that's certainly an option that we can look at. And I think that we're going to move in that direction. If it is found that there's data on those devices that we need to report to families about, or staff, or whoever will comply with all those regulations. So at this point, we just don't know. We did get them back, which is helpful. We just don't know yet what the results of the analysis are because it's not finished yet.
Okay, Janelle, is that the last question?
Oh, yep, that was the last one we have time for today.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, Dr. Gaborik. I appreciate your time and for sharing your update with our membership today, as well as the greater community. So I'd like to welcome now Elena Sudeth, no stranger to the chamber. Hi, Elena, with Alaska 529 to share our sponsor spotlight today. Elena? You're still on mute, Elena. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Sabrina, and thank you, Dr. Gaborik, for a great presentation, and thank you to Fairbanks Chamber for allowing me a couple of minutes to talk to you about Alaska 529. You might remember us under our old name, the UA College Savings Plan, but we have now made a full transition to our new name and our new brand, and that culminated with our new website, which is alaska529plan.com. I am here today to share a very exciting announcement. We talked to you many times in the past about payroll deductions as a quick and simple way to contribute to your Alaska 529 account. In the past, however, the only way to access the payroll deduction option was through a participating employer. So if your employer wasn't our partner, payroll deductions were unfortunately not available to you. Well, we are excited to announce that we now have a direct deposit process that takes your desired amount out of your paycheck and sends it directly to your Alaska 529 account, and that comes at no additional cost. So all you have to do for that is give us a call or fill out the direct deposit form on our website to request a unique account and routing number that you would then give your HR office, just as you would any banking information. A lot of Alaskans open their accounts by checking the box on their PFD applications and contribute through PFD every year. So using payroll deductions is just one of the many methods that we can offer our account holders to add more funds to your account so that your loved ones can follow their dreams debt-free. I will add some contact information in the chat, and I would be happy to answer any questions anyone might have. Thank you again for having me.
Okay, thanks, Elena. I have just one quick question. Are those payroll deduction direct deposits are they pre-tax?
All of the contributions into 529 accounts are post-tax. The tax benefit comes in at distribution time because the account, any earnings in the accounts grow federally tax-free and are free of federal tax if used for qualified distribution.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. I'd like to now ask Michelle Deckard of Fairbanks North Star Borough. She's going to do a spotlight on the borough's CARES grant program. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Sabrina. The Fairbanks North Star Borough's CARES Act program is providing COVID-19 funding relief for business, nonprofit, and healthcare organizations, and I'm just going to go into a little bit of the specifics today. Next slide, please. The CARES Act funding from the borough has been split into 3 separate grants: the Business Interruption Grant, the Personal Protection Equipment Grant, and the Healthcare Impact Grant. The Healthcare Impact Grant did close on September 30th. However, the other 2 grants are still open and there is still funding left. It is first come, first serve, so get your applications in. The deadline for both of those grants is November 30th. Next slide, please. The Personal Protection Equipment Grant will reimburse up to $1,500 for the cost of PPE and other items to help mitigate the spread of coronavirus. These items could be for your employees or for your business patrons. Examples would be masks, hand sanitizer, cleaning supplies, physical barriers, signage, etc. Next slide, please. The Business Interruption Grant, or BIG or BIG, is to provide relief and assistance to businesses and nonprofits. This grant will reimburse for eligible business expenses such as utilities, payroll, rent and mortgage, and other ordinary expenses. To be eligible, you will be required to show either a 25% increase in expenses or a 25% decrease in revenue over a 3-month period between March 1st and November 30th. Next slide, please. Pending assembly approval on this Thursday, the BIG grant may start accepting applications for up to $30,000, and that is compared to the original maximum amount of $15,000. If this passes, the new amount will go live this Friday, November 6th. Applications are still being accepted for $15,000. The application will not close. So if you have not applied before and you are not going to be asking for more than $15,000, do not wait and submit your applications now. If passed by the Assembly, new applicants may apply for up to $30,000, again starting November 6th, and applicants who have already applied and received funding can apply for a second time for an additional $15,000 in reimbursement for eligible expenses. Next slide, please. Information from these grants can be found at fnsb.gov/cares. This is what the main webpage will look like and where you can apply. It is all online. It's going to be really important to look at the Learn More page and read through the guidance document before you apply to any grant. This document will take you through exactly what is going to be asked of you for the application and what documentation you will need to have ready and prepared to apply. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please contact our assistance line. It's 907-450-2453. You can also email us at cares@iialaska.com. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so last up but not least, we have Sarah Sackett and Jen Uhas. They are volunteers for the Midnight Sun Council, Boy Scouts of America, and they are here for our 1-minute spotlight. Sarah and Jen?
Sabrina, actually, it appears that they got bounced off of the line, so unfortunately, they are not here to make their announcements.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we'll hear from them by email and we can get that information out to membership. Thanks, Marissa. Well, with that, thank you all for joining us today, and I appreciate all of our guests for sharing the knowledge that they possess with our membership. We're so proud to be able to provide a platform where we can still communicate with our greater community virtually these days. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next Tuesday. Thank you, Fairbanks. Happy voting.